different would our world be if it was powered by generosity, collaboration, and compassion? Welcome to Business Without Barriers, the show bringing you relevant strategies to thrive and succeed in a volatile world, and the show turning barriers into bridges by bringing humanity back to business. I'm your host, Carmen Wild, and opening up his success vault today is Richie Kendall. Richie was the co-founder and CEO of Cheerful Giving, a company that revolutionized philanthropy with technology. Cheerful Giving was acquired by Goodworld in 2019, and the platform has grown to power the social impact initiatives of many of the world's largest companies and leading nonprofits. Richie now leads Goodworld's product and business growth efforts with a specialty in brand elevation and vertical innovation. Richie has more than 10 years experience in tech, B2B sales, UX design, film media, identity, and storytelling, and he's worked with industry-leading brands including Mastercard, Forever 21, Canon, New Belgium, Pentax, and many more. And he's collaborated with some of the nation's leading advertising agencies. Richie, it is a great pleasure to have you on the show today. A warm welcome to you.
So glad to be here, Carmen.
Fabulous. And we're on opposite sides of the planet, but it feels like we're in the same room. And looking forward to hearing what you have to share about the world of philanthropy. But let's go back to your days in the film industry. If you just allow your memory to span across those days, what fun memory comes to mind that you'd love to share with us?
Oh, sure. I have a whole barrel full. I think something that just brings really fond memories back from my film production days is just the grittiness, really just getting out there, location scouting, hanging cameras from rigs underneath cars, driving around in the backs of trucks, trying to capture that one last shot, at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. I just really appreciate the types of folks who work in the film industry because they're almost like guerrilla storytellers, right? If you're working on a commercial, it's really no different than maybe working in, a more, I wouldn't say dangerous environment, but certainly capturing a real life story on the ground where some drama is happening, because there are politics, there's budgets, there's timelines. And in many cases, you're putting your own safety sometimes at risk just to get that one shot to tell the story you're trying to tell. So, I have a lot of stories, but it was mostly just, hanging off the back of trucks and doing really fun and wild things that I remember so fondly.
We have no idea when we're watching something like that, or a movie, or like you say, a commercial, what actually goes on behind the scenes. It's staggering actually. And you've been part of that. So, but I've got some questions around that in a moment. Let's go back even before that. What was Richie like as a child?
I think since I could start moving, I was what you would call a creative person. I really was inspired by the natural world. I think I would spend probably hours on end, trying to find a bunny rabbit or maybe pulling some bugs out of the earth. And I think I was drawing as a studio artist as early as like 5 or 6 years old.
Wow.
I had some kind of ability to mimic what I could see with a pencil and paintbrushes. And so growing up, I was just a very curious and creative little kid. That's sort of what I was like as a youngster. But I was always very team oriented too, and kind of like the little leader of my troop as an older brother and the eldest of a whole series of younger cousins that I had. So a little bit of a ringleader as well.
So what do you think would this just be a natural talent, or did something inspire this creative in you?
That's a really good question. I think part of it is maybe what you inherit, and what I mean by that is both from within your genes, but also within almost your epigenetic memory. I think that your parents' stories have a lot to do with what you inherit. There, I don't want to get too meta on the call, but there is some kind of intrinsic memory that is being passed through generations, in terms of what kind of passions you have as a young person, what kind of skills you end up really mastering. That's got to come from somewhere, and I don't know where down the line you pick it up from. But my father was he was a business person, an athlete, a creative person, a leader. And so, considering the fact that I lost him to cancer at 6 years old, there has to be some kind of endowment that I have beyond what he was able to teach me, because he was really, not there in the flesh to teach me a lot of the skills that I've learned today. So I have to think that there's some kind of epigenetic memory that is being passed through generation to generation.
Yes, I'm with you on that. Given you had such a critical life event so early, at such a tender age, how do you think that event shifted you and impacted the rest of your life? Has there been something that you can notably say, well, this was a catalyst to something?
I think so. I think it would be hard not to conclude that the death of a parent at 6 years old wouldn't have a profound effect on the trajectory of your life. And I don't mean negative. I think not that we should ever, view death or loss as a positive event. It's not, it's loss. But my father's memory and all of the people he touched over the course of his life inspired me as a young person to want to be like that. So in some ways, I was looking up to the memory of someone. I was looking up to all of the most profound impact that he had on others throughout his life. So I was looking almost up to a more idealized version of a role model, in the same way that we look up to some of the great sages and activists like Martin Luther King, Gandhi, especially those that died over sacrifice, self-sacrifice, that led movements. These folks aren't around to inspire us today in the flesh, but it's almost the fact that they aren't there, that they're in spirit, that we find so much deep inspiration. So I think, just to go back to your question, I do remember it was Christmas Eve when he passed, and we were having a family gathering. And I remember just kind of staring into the void. I was looking down a flight of stairs as my uncle was telling me that I think I asked him specifically, will I see dad again? Because I was having this realization that he was gone. And I think in that moment, I had the first almost like cognitive flip switch about the existential nature of life, that you can lose someone forever, and that must have put me on a path where I was thinking about life being precious, where I was thinking about what am I going to do with my life, knowing that it can be short or that it can be taken away from you. And I think that's maybe what led me to storytelling. It's what led me to focus on what I was passionate about. And I think at the end of the day, it maybe even led me into some of the thematic content that I've explored over the course of my vocational landscape, if you will.
So I find it interesting that your dad passes on Christmas Eve, Christmas being a season of giving.
Yeah.
and you name your company Cheerful Giving, which is, do you think there was any link in that name with this season of giving?
You know, I think it was there's just things happen for a reason, right? And I was in film for 8 years, but was doing a lot of side work. I was building websites. I was designing logos. I was telling stories for nonprofits and small businesses, just moonlighting. And I was referred by a few connections to help build this brand around a next generation giving product. And I think honestly, the reason that I was referred, or the reason that that project ended up coming to me, is because I had been prepared to work on it. It's kind of like everything you do, you're preparing yourself for the next game or the next challenge or the next project. And what you are putting out into the world is ultimately being reflected back into you. And so the fact that, I got involved with that project so early on as somewhat of a obscure design freelancer, and ended up kind of building that product and transforming it into what it is today at Goodworld, is just a matter of the energy that I was putting out into the world. So I agree with you in kind of the framing of that question.
For sure. It's incredible what the energy field around us brings to us in the most obscure ways, but that is just beautiful and part of a grand design. Tell us a little bit about Cheerful Giving. I mean, that there's so much about, we'll talk about Goodwill in a little bit, but tell us when you co-founded this, what was the vision? Give us a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, it did have its own sort of transformational story, as all things do. They start as a sprout and then they grow their leaves and they flower. And it started as an idea from a serial investor who saw that there was a change happening in the payments space. He understood, being on the Federal Reserve Task Force for Faster Digital Payments, that there was an ACH wave that was coming. ACH being the bank-to-bank money transfer that a lot of the major peer-to-peer payment platforms operate on, like Venmo and Zelle and Acorns and Stash and Robinhood. A lot of these platforms use the Federal Reserve VPN to move money from bank to bank because it does not require a same day settlement in the same way that a credit card transaction does. And so this investor entrepreneur wanted to create some kind of recurring revenue flow in the market using his ACH connections. He had some banking relationships, and he thought that the philanthropic and sort of faith-based community was a really good place to do that because donations and tithing don't require same-day settlement, and people do it every single week. Every Sunday they support their church. People are always donating money to causes they care about, and that kind of lit up my passion it really lit up my passion for philanthropy and building a movement around philanthropy, because the more I learned about the industry and how poorly it's served and how disjointed and chaotic all of the technology really is, and how stovepiped the whole design of the philanthropy infrastructure is, I thought, this is a challenge I can dedicate myself to and get a lot of fulfillment. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, such an interesting sort of entry into this. But you've got this incredible vision of a world powered by generosity, collaboration, and compassion. So tell us a little bit about that vision and how you see cheerful giving. And if you want to, start to talk about Goodworld, how are these companies helping you see this vision come to life?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. There's a lot of depth to that. I've always been somewhat of a, this goes back to maybe my early days as being a curious person, right? I'm watching the world. I'm observing it. And maybe that's what led me into the documentary filmmaking and telling stories. But I have sort of a social critique kind of built into myself as well. So when I see things that are perhaps not well designed, I'm always thinking, okay, how can we design this better to align incentives, or to make us more productive, or to make us more happy, more fulfilled? And so I've always focused on building a life for myself and those that I love and my family and friends that is fulfilling, comfortable, purpose driven, and abundant. And so with the world we're looking at, it has a lot of poor design. I think even some of our economic structures and models are just breaking down based on poor designs, the wrong incentive alignments, the wrong models, uh, a misunderstanding of the way humans work, right? A lot of it is just behavioral economics kind of gone wrong. So my passion for building and growing and galvanizing and mobilizing a world that is more powered on human values is just a reflection of seeing bad designs in the environment, seeing my brothers and sisters suffering out there in the world needlessly when there are so many resources and so much abundance around us. So that's sort of where my passion has come from, and it's why I've been so focused on building a world powered by these human values.
Tell us how it's translating from a sort of from what we see in these companies. If you could give us a little bit more of the actual activities that are springing from this kind of thinking and making it this really innovative company. I mean, I think it was Fast Company named Goodworld as one of the most innovative companies. So what are these things coming through the company that's allowing you to see this change?
Yeah, this opens up a lot of really fascinating territory. Uh, we're looking at a world that has become very centralized in the way it manages authority, right? We have big banks that manage sort of all money movement. We have large companies that are sort of leveraging most of the resources as compared to small companies, whether it's subsidies or it's some kind of corporate welfare or some kind of political favor, lobbying. So it's almost like the more power a company accrues, the more ability and leverage it has to accrue more power. And that's a bad cycle. So a lot of what Goodworld and Cheerful are focused on doing is creating more flattened structures, more decentralized structures. And these types of structures are also seen in a lot of the other economic models and movements coming to bear across the world, including cryptocurrencies, quadratic voting and funding, rank choice voting concepts, where instead of just there being a central authority that has a lot of power, we put the power in the hands of individuals. And we see this across the upvote economy. We see this in how our voices are being heard through social media. It is interesting that 1 decade ago, you could never even dream of getting access to a celebrity or have your voice being heard by a politician. And today you can live tweet them and get a response. You can send a direct message to your hero and potentially hear back from that person. So it's really these decentralized structures that are changing the way we operate. And we're just leveraging those trends within giving and philanthropy in order to realize, a flatter, more equitable environment.
Mm. Do you want to maybe explain some of the, you've made philanthropy really sexy. You've given this opportunity for giving in many, many different ways, in cheerful ways, in really different, exciting ways. Do you want to give us a little bit of that? What the actual features and benefits?
Absolutely. We've always thought about ourselves as an innovations company, as building new experiences that are rewarding, that are meaningful, that are fun, and that are easy, because giving should be easy, right? So one thing that we sort of started with was we're the inventor of #donate. This gives you the ability to just type #donate into a comment field on Facebook and Twitter to make an instant donation. What easier way to support a movement, or what easier way to support a specific cause of a friend or nonprofit than to just be able to type #donate right into a comment and let other people know that you're supporting that cause. We were also the first mover in what we call roundup fundraising, which enables an individual to link their payment method directly to a cause of their choice. So whenever they make a purchase, the spare change rounded to the nearest dollar automatically gets donated. Mm-hmm. And this was sort of our claim to fame at Cheerful, where we were able to sell that technology into the marketplace as a white label solution to leading nonprofit brands in order for them to build up recurring revenue streams that meet a younger audience. So, those are two examples of some of the innovation that we're involved with. And, the next wave of innovation, I think, is our most exciting yet. And I'd be happy to share sort of what we're coming up with if you think now's a good time.
I'd love to. Go for it.
Yeah, so we have learned a lot with our technology over the last 4 to 5 years in terms of all the data, the behaviors, how users interact with our experiences. Those experiences range from traditional fundraising tools like giving forms and pages on your website to peer-to-peer style fundraising like GoFundMe, where you can create a fundraiser and add a goal and have your network help you reach that goal. We do text to give, we do events and ticketing, we do auctions, we do virtual experiences. So anything you can imagine creating a charitable component, we offer that experience online, device non-specific, across every type of landing page that you can imagine. What we're rolling out now is the product of all of those learnings. And it's something we call G-Force. And it's essentially a formula that scales social impact. So what do I mean by that? It's almost the combination of social sciences and viral coefficients, things that play with both the way we behave online as well as sheer arithmetic in a way that allows an individual to multiply their initial intention. Let me just give you an example. Typically, an influencer, an impact investor, or a large corporation will make a large philanthropic donation. They'll cut a check to a nonprofit and they'll write a press release. They'll let their employees know, and that's that. What would happen if you cut that large donation into tiny little pieces and you showered that money across your community, whether it's your employees or your customers or your followers online? The trick is they can only redeem that money at a social cause, at a 501c3 nonprofit. So you're putting money in the hands of an individual and you're asking them, how do you want to change the world? You're not saying, I won't donate unless you donate. You're not saying we won't match your donation unless you put in the first dollar. You're in fact giving first. And what happens when you do that is you skyrocket the engagement. The testing we've done over the last 3 months is that on an email, 50% of people redeem the card they receive from an employer or a vendor. Because when you feel that you've been given something that you're responsible for before, let's say, it expires, you take that responsibility on. And our system nudges every individual who redeems the money to pay it forward. And it's just a nudge. It's just saying, hey, would you add a little bit to that? Would you match this gift? Would you want to send a gift card to a friend? And this process ends up multiplying the original investment by 10-fold, 100-fold, 1,000-fold, just depending on how many people touch the money. Because now instead of taking a big donation and sending it to one place, you're now creating a ripple effect out of all of that money that goes to, thousands of different places and truly makes a difference based on the agency of the individuals involved.
That's incredible. I mean, I'm totally fascinated by the thinking behind it. I mean, the smartness of the construction and the design that enables this pay it forward principle, which is so powerful, and then literally that G-force effect. I mean, it's absolute sheer brilliance. Have you launched it already? Are you in the throes of it?
Yes. So we have launched the version 1 of the experience, which essentially allows a company or an individual to make a donation and then cut that up into certain increments. Let's say it's a $5,000 donation you want to make to social justice. You get to choose which charities, maybe top 5 or 10 that you want that money to be directed to. And then you ask your community, hey, here's $25. Please choose one of these charities and help us spread out this impact. And so we've gotten all of the early numbers around the conversion dialed in. We're working on version 2, which will be incorporating matching rules like match cap per person. What happens when people reach a match cap within their company. We've got an influencer version of this, which is kind of what we're most excited about, where an individual can just post a pile of charitable dollars online and then invite a free-for-all of followers to redeem those in tiny increments. That will be released in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So we're kind of rolling out this concept as we're building it, and everything we've seen so far has us believing it's revolutionary.
Totally. I would totally say that. And lots of best wishes. This is such a beautiful initiative, and wow, filled with love, and the intent is really beautiful. So wishing you just an incredible, something like this, like you say, has way more than a pay it forward. It really does have that G-force ability to, it's like the concept we're putting out in terms of clients that we work with through our coaching is pay it forward in terms of value first. And that value just has the most incredible way of appreciating in ways you can't even quantify, which is exactly what you're doing. How does so I'm assuming you have just thousands of opportunities and ways for people to make choices in terms of their donations, and you're adding to that all the time. How extensive is your offering? Is it local to, is it in the US, or are you starting to look at an international offering?
Yeah, we started our focus in the United States, being a startup in the US. We ran through Mastercard's Start Path program, which has opened up a lot of opportunities for us. We've done launches in Australia, UK. We've done work in Canada, and broadly speaking, I would say our international offering is something that is going to be on the menu over the next 12 months. So we will truly be a global philanthropy company through some partnerships with PayPal Giving Fund and our payment processor Stripe. So while we are supporting mostly the list of 501c3s in the United States at this time, that will be changing over the next 12 months.
That's exciting. How does your company get involved with, and is there a way to ensure that the money actually hits the ground, that tangible change is happening on the ground? Is there any way that you are involved, or do spot checks or anything like that?
Yeah, so all of the nonprofits in our system are 501c3 organizations in good standing, who we vet before adding them to our platform. There is, of course, what we consider the GuideStar database, which is a reputable charity watchdog who keeps all of that public information on these organizations, making sure that they continue to be in good standing and provide other metrics around their effectiveness and their efficiency in terms of how they use their funds, and even provide a rating system on nonprofits. So we leverage really all the best information that we have in order to provide that to the user base. So just generally speaking, we're working with our charitable partners on helping them tell their stories, create milestones of impact for individuals who are supporting them, allowing those charities to report out what kind of impact individuals are making when they make a commitment. And really, we think that the people on the ground are in the best position to do that.
Fantastic. You must get some beautiful stories coming back, which must make your work so meaningful. Is there a story you could share of meaningful impact that you've come across that was made known to you guys?
Yeah, I'm blown away by some of the stories that come in. One that just comes to mind is during the height of COVID in Los Angeles. We were working with the mayor and the Mayor's Fund of Los Angeles to raise money for a really dire situation. I mean, I don't know how well reported it was, but the US's major cities were getting shaken by COVID spikes, especially around March, April, May of last year. And they were running out of beds. The sort of PPE, all of the equipment required to meet that surge was just not being delivered in a timely way. And you had lines and lines and lines around blocks of people, under tents outside hospitals, just trying to service COVID cases. And we have this tool that lets you kind of write in personal messages when you make a donation. And some of those came across our wire that we flagged. And we saw like a small classical music group of 8 and 9-year-old immigrant children from mostly Upper Asia who did violin lessons and were part of like a little parochial school in Los Angeles, who literally pooled all of their savings as a class and made it as a donation to the mayor's fund in the height of this COVID spike. I mean, we're talking about some of the most marginalized communities in Los Angeles pooling their resources as children to help others in their community. And it's like stories like those where you can see this utter generosity in the face of challenges, even when you don't have a lot of resources, but you're willing to just give them to help others, that really move us, and I think are what we want to power this ecosystem moving forward.
It goes beyond beautiful, Richie. I mean, what you're speaking of is, we're bombarded with all the dark stories around what's happening on our planet, and especially over the last, say, 14 months or so. And yet there's this magical spirit of humanity that, when powered, like you say, people just need to have to be given an opportunity. Or maybe they don't know how to, or they have so little they don't think it's going to make a difference. Yet it's these small acts of kindness that make such a difference, and you are bringing this technology to make it possible. So I want to know about this bringing the human into the machine. Is this what you mean, or tell us what you mean by that?
That's exactly what we mean, and you say it so well. Technology of the digital age is young. I would say, within the last, 30, 40 years since computing started, but it was only really the last 15 to 20 years since social started coming into the fore. I mean, Facebook didn't get started until, I was in early high school. So that was, that was about 15 years ago now. And the shift that has caused within the culture of the society, in the way we see ourselves and the way we project ourselves, now with all of the different proliferation of different types of social media and technology, has had almost like a lightning kind of effect on where we're headed. And I don't think we've adapted to it yet. And it's why we've found that there's like rising anxiety, depression amongst this younger generation, who are just kind of coming up into these trends and these behaviors and these tools without much acclimation, without the experience and wisdom to wield these types of tools. And so what we believe at Goodworld, and our alliance of growing companies, influencers, nonprofits, is that it's time for us to imbue wisdom and experience and humanity and our human values back into this technology, because we built it. It shouldn't have the motivations of machines. The machines should be doing heavy lifting that we don't want to be doing, and should be helping us scale our intent. But what's happening is these machines are motivating us in some ways, whether that's advertising models that are all about just keeping eyeballs on the screen, or it's emotional manipulation relating to your social fabric as a young person that keeps you almost addicted to this screen, or questioning yourself, or feeling self-conscious, or comparing yourself to others. And those aren't human values, right? I think the human values we want to promote are self-respect, self-appreciation, gratitude, generosity, collaboration versus competition, that we can do more better as a group, and that we can build something bigger and more human than we've ever seen if we make that our intent, and we make sure that the machines we're building and the technology we're building comes from that space.
Wow, I hope there's some plans for Goodworld to hook up with all the giant tech companies out there, rolling out AI, and this is exactly what we need, for us to bring that human into the machine, because the tech is incredible, but it's devastating if we don't have the human in that machine. And that if we aren't driving it without the values that makes us so precious, as humans. So there's just so much to behind the scenes here. This is an amazing glimpse as to what's really driving this company. Really incredible. Richie, part of Business Without Barriers is about, as you're doing, breaking down these barriers that you're experiencing and seeing through your experiences. And part of the breaking through the barriers, or not part, most of it is what goes on in our minds, and thinking through smart solutions, as you've been explaining. I'm curious to get a glimpse into your mind. You've got this beautiful interplay between business experience and design experience. So there's that left, right brain that's totally lit up in your mind. How do you approach a challenge? So when you're presented with a rather tough challenge, give us an idea of how you tackle that.
It's a good question. I think the first thing is accepting a challenge. You have every right to accept or not accept a challenge, right? Just because a challenge presents itself to you, that doesn't mean it's a worthwhile challenge. Things sort of crumble into the road in front of us all the time. And we have the choice whether that is something we want to engage in, if that's worth our time, our commitment, or not. So if it's a challenge worth accepting, and I think that type of challenge falls under some important criteria to me. Is it something that is going to strengthen the integrity of myself, my friends, my family, my community, the world? Then that's a challenge I accept. If it's a challenge of deciding whether I want to go work for a group that I don't agree with their values, or I have to solve a problem that I don't think is going to be productive and lift up humanity, that's not a challenge I accept. So I think the way I approach challenges is it in alignment with the vision of the world that I want to see and the world I want to be a part of and the contribution I want to make, or not? And then if it is a challenge that, I find to be something worthwhile, it's like the joy of doing, right? It's not necessarily about the end state. It's not about the means to an end. It's, can you find joy in creating? Can you find joy in collaborating? Can you find joy in solving problems? Maybe I'm built in a way where I enjoy solving problems, and that's not everyone's cup of tea. They find joy in other ways. But I very much love to learn. I love learning new skills. I love learning how things work. I love putting that value together, almost like a puzzle, to create something new. And I think a lot of creatives, that's what drives them. It's that creative desire to mix and match and plug something into something else in order to make something that is new. And they say, nothing is new under the sun, but with all the ingredients we have and all the history and all the amazing innovations and leaps forward we've accomplished as a humanity, we can mix that all up and do a remix that's more human, that's more fulfilling, that tells new stories and excites us in ways that we didn't even know we could be excited. So I guess that's what drives me. And when I approach a challenge, that's what I take into it.
I had a feeling you would approach that question with a very interesting answer. Thank you. If you're immersed in creative and driving innovation, you're involved in brand elevation. And we're in the space in our world right now where it's not even a negotiable anymore. It's a non-negotiable for us to be creative and drive it. And it's the only way we can get ahead of the curve. Is there a tip you can provide, a practical tip in terms of how do you inspire creativity? Because it's not everybody's forte, but every entrepreneur is having to become that. Any tips that come to mind you can share?
Yeah, I think there's two. One is learn by doing. Don't wait until you have some prerequisite amount of knowledge before diving in. I always find that if it's picking up a new skill or getting oriented around a new software or integrating some new tool into our business processes or, my creative suite, it's just get your hands dirty. Like, don't be afraid of experimenting. Don't be afraid of, sort of seeing what happens when you put, X, Y, and Z in the same beaker. And then the other would be surround yourself and make available to yourself other creative individuals, other people that inspire you, that maybe bring a different skill set to bear that you can divide and conquer with, right? So look for your people. I would say, it's not often that you find folks that like truly resonate with your energy in a way that you can multiply one another's power and multiply one another's desire. So whether it's, your soulmate, or it's, that long-term business partner, or it's some relationship that you guys just check in on to inspire one another and share ideas and dream. If you can surround yourself by the right people, you can be fulfilled. That's what I truly believe.
Lovely. Awesome tips. Thank you. So what do you think would ultimately make the world a better place?
I think this is really a question of values, and we keep coming back to this. We're like these animals that started picking up tools and learned how to do all these things, but we're not doing it in a way that reflects who we truly are and who we truly can become. So I would just say it's really a matter of refocusing our attention on what's truly important, because without sounding too, dystopic or pessimistic, like the natural world is kind of evaporating around us based on our activity. There are a lot of troubling trends, but there is a lot of optimistic trends as well. And I think that if we can just stay focused on what kind of world do we want to see, and what kind of movements can we build, and what kind of even concessions and compromises can we make in order to see that world through, that we can make it all worthwhile for our posterity and, those that will leave this earth too. And I think if we don't, we're really kind of shirking our obligation to higher powers and ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Out of everything that you've done, Richie, and you've done a lot in actually a short space of time, what would you say is one of your most cherished successes to date?
I think the acquisition of Cheerful Giving by Goodworld was definitely a milestone. And I don't say that because it was, some major payday or anything like that. It truly wasn't. It was really more of a balance sheet acquisition where two companies are coming together to make each other stronger. And I think what me and my business partners realized when we started the conversation before our companies came together was that we were two sides of the same coin, and that if we came together, we could do scales more than what we could do alone. And that has really proved itself out. I mean, we went from being a very lean, almost bootstrapped B2B sales company as Cheerful Giving, serving the nonprofit sector, to now becoming, a social impact operating system that is powering Mastercard's donation platform, that is working with major banks and financial institutions on their employee and customer engagement programs, that's rolling out inside corporate social responsibility foundations through payroll giving and other forms of long-term sustainable community development programs. We're working with cities, states, mayors, celebrities like John Legend and pro football players and Major League Baseball, on helping them scale their impact and making impact a part of their brand experience, so that these brands and companies can become human, almost in the way that a lot of us humans are becoming more like brands and having to kind of communicate as brands and businesses. So, I think that acquisition was a major milestone for a whole lot of reasons.
Yeah, wow. There's so much substance in what you guys are doing. It's incredible and beautiful to see that there are companies out there doing what you're doing. So, what would you, if you could share a deeply meaningful message with the world straight from your heart, what would you want to share?
Maybe this goes back to that realization I had when I was 6, and that is that life is extremely precious. We don't know if it's the only one that we will have, and it can be taken away from you at any time, tragically or through some kind of just random ailment, or circumstance. And I just believe that we shouldn't act good because it's the right thing, because it's just the right thing to do. I think that deep down, the entire desire of creation is to know itself through all of us. All of these little windows of experience that we have are just blessings. They're like little stars that come into existence and twinkle and then come back, forever. And so I think your unique story, your unique life experience is just so precious, and you should show yourself the dignity of spreading that preciousness and spreading the love you have to give and the passions and talents and skills that you have out into the world. Because if you don't do that, you really just will remain unrealized.
Such a powerful message. Thank you. And thank you, Richie, for giving us a glimpse of what you and your team are doing at Goodworld, and just spreading. You're actually sprinkling those twinkles and creating this ability for individuals to be stars in their own right by giving, and that's just such an incredible activity for a company to be involved in every day. So thank you for sharing so openly. Thank you for sharing your own story and where it all came from. And we just wish you only the best, because we need those humans in these machines that are going to take over our world. So best we direct it. So thank you for what you're doing.
Well, yeah, thank you, Carmen. I mean, your friendship means a lot, and you've always been nothing but supportive. I believe in everything you're doing, so look forward to all the ways in which we'll be working together in the future.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your contribution as well.
Oh, Fabulous, and just such a beautiful hour spent with you. Thank you, Richie. I know you've got a lot going on, so thank you for making this time. And to every one of you watching or listening, wherever you may be, I know you're going to be touched in many ways, just as I have on so many occasions during this last hour. And just a final thought here is that every single act of kindness makes a difference. And let's tap deeper into our humanity, because this is what makes us precious. This is what we have. Our authenticity is what matters. Each other is what matters. So let's tap in and pay it forward. And no matter how tiny, and it doesn't even have to be money, it can be an act of kindness. It can be a smile. It can be just cheerful, being cheerful with each other. So let's connect in love. And together we will create a new human story. Until next time, lots of love.